All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. I am really excited because today I'm joined by my friend Jordan Freed. He's an executive coach to some of the most elite real estate professionals on the planet with a reputation for helping performers break through conditioned limitations. Jordan guides entrepreneurs in building businesses that feel as good as they look. He combines mindset mastery, leadership development, and practical strategy to help ambitious professionals create sustainable, freedom-driven success. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, Anna.
I'm glad you're here. You and I share such a similar philosophies. We've talked about that before about mindset and alignment and living intentionally. And for our listeners who might be meeting you for the first time, would you share a little bit of your journey and what inspires you to be that person in so many people's lives?
Yeah, I actually started in my first real estate office when I was a sophomore in high school. And
Wow.
yeah, my best friend's mom owned a brokerage and I had no money. And so went to work for her. In college, I was at a title company and it was me and 85 women. It was great though, because in college, it was like I had 85 moms. I was never hungry. It was
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
Yeah. And I got licensed in 2006. I sold for 6 years and then became a team leader and became a coach in 2015. So I've been coaching now full time for 10 years. But if you look at my family tree, Anna, everybody is an educator. And not just on my side of the family, but also my wife, Rochelle. Her dad is a teacher, her sister is a teacher. My mom was a teacher, my sister's a teacher, my aunts and uncles are teachers. So virtually everyone in our family tree to some degree is some form of an educator.
Yeah.
And that's just how I think of myself. And the second that I learned that coaching was a profession, I knew that was where I was going to end up. I just didn't want to make a teacher's salary. I didn't want to have a limit on my income because I felt like that would limit my impact. And so that's what drew me here and has kept me here.
Do you think that you also, now looking back, might find more fulfillment in helping adults? Because there's a big difference. And not to say that if we could teach some of the things we teach adults now as coaches, if we could teach our youth, right, that would change a lot. However, it is a different context when you're helping someone maybe break through or free them. And we'll talk about my free life in a minute, but free them from, whatever might be holding them back.
Yeah, I mean, even when I was a little kid, I never really wanted to be the person up in lights. I always wanted to be a person that helped get people to that point. And, today, the way that I describe it, I grew up in this really little town outside of Wichita, Kansas. It's called Clearwater. It's just this little farming community. And my dad was always our baseball coach when I was growing up. And we played on this field that wasn't really high quality. And so he would always teach us, right? Like when in baseball, get down on the ball, don't be afraid of it. And he would hit us grounders. And yet there were chunks of rock in that infield where we would play out behind the elementary school. And, sometimes the ball would be traveling along and it would hit that rock and it would just pop right over our heads, right? And it would frustrate him because there's no way to teach a kid how to deal with that. And so after practice, sometimes he would even go out there and be collecting chunks of rock out of the field. And it later served as like the greatest metaphor for me is that I want to be a rock in the infield. I want people's lives to be traveling along. And then when they collide with me, that they shoot off into a completely different stratosphere.
Wow.
And
That's pretty
there's
profound.
yeah, there's just something about that. And, we have a group program called the Freed Method, and everybody who joins us, we actually send them a rock that says rock in the infield. And
Oh,
yeah, it's just a constant reminder of what we as coaches are meant to do here. It's to have an impact on people's lives and the stories they share of the changes they've made and the ripple effect. There is no better satisfaction to me other than family. So it's a very rewarding, as you know, it's a
yeah,
very rewarding profession.
it is. And I'm sure a lot of people can think about My Freed Life and come up with what they believe is the meaning, but what does it mean for you? You've created this trademark.
Yeah. So I believe that each and every one of us actually wants the same thing.
Mhm.
And what we want is to define and design our version of the word freedom. I think that each and every one of us want that. Now, freedom is subjective. What might be freedom to you isn't freedom to me. And so we've got to get really clear on what is your definition of freedom.
Right.
And that's what my free life is all about, is helping people define and design their version of the word freedom through a series of insights and exercises. And today it's a 2-day course that it's an immersive experience. We used to teach it in really big classrooms, and yet it always felt like something was missing when I was doing that. It was the relationship with the participants. And today it's a 2-day conversation where I take 12 people. We're all in a room together and I get to build a relationship. I know everybody's name, and we just help them kind of unlock this version of freedom. And more importantly, what's interfering with you from having that life today. And a lot of that, as you already know, is going to be cultural conditioning programs, self-sabotaging behaviors. And so teaching them, here's how to actually identify and pull those things that are getting in your way out of the way.
What does freedom represent? What does that mean for you?
Freedom to me is, I think of it like an infinity symbol, right? And so if you take an 8 and lay it on its side, on one hand, to me, if you were to write inside of the left side of that infinity symbol the word student, and then on the right hand side, it's the word teacher.
Mm.
And so freedom to me is always kind of living in this classroom that we call life. And so on one hand, I always think of myself and feel the most free when I'm being a student, reading, sitting in a classroom, listening to a podcast. Writing is a big thing that I've gotten into, especially over the last 6 months. But then ultimately taking what you've learned, right, and then teaching it to others through courses, classes, being an example. And the way that I think about it, Anna, is like if you think of the student and the teacher, where those two things intersect in the middle, that's coaching to me.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so I think of it like that, freedom to me. And I actually can tell anytime that my soul gets a little bit into like, you ever had a Charlie horse in your calf?
Yeah.
Middle
Yeah.
of the, anytime I've got like a Charlie horse in my soul, I've learned that I have stepped off of that track
Yeah.
somehow.
You're out of alignment somehow, right?
Yep, I'm not learning, I'm not teaching. And I think that it lends to what I call the path of the infinite life. And it's a deep conversation. And yet when you think about something that is of the infinite, like having an infinite life, it's pursuing a life where the things that you're after have to be earned, they can't be bought. For example, my wife and I met in kindergarten. I met her actually on a soccer field when we were
Aw.
4 years old. And we've been together now. This is year 22. And actually, next month or next year, in May of next year, we even calculated it. We will have been together longer than we were apart from the time we were born until, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so, when I think about the love and respect I have with my wife and that she has with me, I couldn't buy that. I had to earn it. When I think about the relationship I have with my children, I couldn't buy it. I had to earn it. The skill set that I've developed as a coach, I couldn't buy it. I had to earn it.
Right.
So what I found is kind of the infinite life or the path of fulfillment, the path of freedom for me, and I think for many others, this is what I think we're all kind of meant to do here. It's the pursuit of four things. And
Taking notes.
the first one is just learning as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
learning as much as you can so that you can grow as much as you can, so that you can love as much as you can, so you can give as much as you can. And when I'm focused on that, I feel like fire, not water. And that's one of the integral parts of the things that I teach people, because right now we've got this whole language around I'm so exhausted, everybody's burned out, I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. And I'll never forget there was this one coaching call where, and you've probably had this experience, Anna, when you're in the middle of a coaching conversation and you are just like something comes through you,
Oh,
right?
yes,
It's
definitely.
hard to explain.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like it's
but
being downloaded into you.
that's it. Yeah, that's a great way to, it's like a
Yeah.
track team.
And I usually say to my client, like, I have to share something with you if it's okay, because I feel like I am compelled to.
Yeah. In
So,
those moments, I think of it like The universe just gave me her Wi-Fi codes.
Yes, that's a good one too.
Yeah, and so there was this one client, and she was talking about that as her business grew, right? She just had more and more people to quote unquote pour into. And
Mm,
so, she was pouring into all these people, and more people meant pouring in. And I finally, like in that moment, I got the Wi-Fi code of the universe, and something just came out of my mouth. And I said, the challenge is that you've never learned to be fire. You act like water. And
mm.
she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, just imagine if you and I are standing next to each other and I've got an empty cup and you have a full one. So your cup's full of water and mine's empty. Knowing you, what you're going to do is pour half of your cup into mine, right? Now I'm really happy, Anna, because my cup went up, but what happened to yours? It went down. Now, if you think about a candle, if I'm standing next to you and your candle's lit and mine isn't, and you light my candle, does it diminish your flame?
No.
No. And so what I've found is that when we're walking that path, at least for me, of being the student and the teacher, right? And it's in the pursuit of learning, growing, loving, and giving, then I don't feel like I'm pouring into others. I feel like fire. I don't feel like water. Does that make
That's
sense?
awesome. I've never thought of it that way. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And we talked a second ago about alignment, which is really a lot of what you're describing. And you talked a little bit about knowing when you're in and out of alignment. How do you help someone recognize when they're out of alignment? Or if someone listening, right? Maybe this is a new thought to them. Talk a little bit about what that means being out of alignment.
Well, I think that to me is what are the notifications that you're being given? And so I always share the story in of August 2020. I speak a lot in stories, analogies, and metaphors, as I'm sure you do too.
I do.
Yeah.
Our listeners know that.
Well, and if you're a listener and you aspire to be a coach or a coaching leader, I'll tell you one thing that was really helpful for me early on in my career is I had a mentor that told me to keep a stories, metaphor, and analogies book. Every time you hear a story, an analogy, an exercise, just write it down. And so I started doing that, and I've been doing it for 10 years. So now I have like this library of stories to pull from. But 2020, August, I was actually asked to present at Mega Camp, which is a Keller Williams National Conference. And at that point, it was virtual because we were still in the throes of COVID. And they told us to be there 15 or 45 minutes early before we were to go on stage. And so at 1:15, I showed up, supposed to be on stage at 2 o'clock. And at 1:22, my computer did this hard reset. And it just reset right there. And I have a Mac. Everything that I use is a Mac. And if you have a Mac and it resets, you know what happens. There's this like Apple logo in the center, and then there's this bar at the bottom that tells you the progress and it tells you how long it's going to take. And so I am losing my mind, and that bar says that it's going to take like an hour
Oh
for
boy.
this thing to update, and I'm stuck. I can't get to another computer. There's nothing that I can do. Well, the good news is that it only took it like 28 minutes. And so at 1:50, I popped back on. I was able to give that talk. And yet the thing of it is that I could sit here, Anna, and blame the computer and say, oh, that stupid computer at hard reset. But guess what had been happening for the 6 weeks before that is every day I would log on, I would open my computer up, and this little reminder would pop up. And it always says the same thing. You need to update. And there's this little drop down, right? And I would click the drop down. And what's the drop down say? Remind me tomorrow.
Yes.
So
I
remind me
just
tomorrow.
clicked on that this morning. That's
Yeah.
why I'm
And
laughing.
so
Oh,
somebody being out of alignment, right? It's like, well, what are the notifications that you've been ignoring? And they're subtle. And something that I share with people often is that if you don't ever get still, you never get access to your wisdom.
yes.
Such a hurry. One of the things I share with people, it's a quote that I wrote. Your constant need to make shit happen all the time isn't
Mm-hmm.
productivity. It's compulsion and illness and action.
Mm,
Many of us are living a well-orchestrated panic attack and just calling it a life. And so if you're in that mode all the time of just orienting yourself into fight and flight, that should be a symptom to you that you're out of alignment.
Yeah.
You
And isn't
know,
it true for some people, chaos is a little addicting?
sure, sure. I mean, the thing of it is that I say that to clients as well. You know, your ability to live in chaos is amazing. Your willingness to tolerate it is maddening.
Mm,
But you get notified all the time that you're out of alignment.
yeah.
And so, what are the notifications that you've been ignoring? Because oftentimes, what happens is that's going to build into an event that happens at a very inopportune time. It's just like our health, right? If you're not going to make time for wellness, you're going to make time for illness,
Yeah.
right? And so you probably knew all along you were out of alignment. And we want to point at like it was this event or it was this thing. It was my computer. It wasn't my computer. It was the 6 weeks that it prompted me that I ignored it. So I help people kind of understand the subtle cues. What are the little ways that life is trying to nudge you before you get a big notification?
Yeah. The awareness is everything. And one of the things that I've heard you say before too, because all of this can be very uncomfortable, unsettling, right? When someone, most times awareness reveals that, but you can't grow unless you get uncomfortable. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that if we're talking about drive and growth, right, is all growth good? No, because if you have a growth that shows up in your brain that
Mm,
isn't supposed to be there,
mhm.
right, then that's a tumor. Not all growth is good. And so there's some growth that comes from what I call pathological pushing. And pathological pushing is when you're growing as a form of avoidance. There's something that you're just afraid of, something that you're running from. And so you're growing from pathologically pushing yourself. But then the other thing is that there's what I call gravitational pulling. And that's the type of growth that happens when, let's use the word alignment, you're in alignment with the impact that you're meant to have here, your version of the word freedom. And so the comfort zone conversation, are you pushing yourself out of the comfort zone or are you being pulled out of your comfort zone?
Fascinating, right?
Yeah. And it's a way more fun to kind of angle to look at it, right?
Yeah. How do you know the difference if someone's listening to this right now? Because I'm thinking too, how do I know the difference when I'm being pulled versus pushed?
Two ways. One, just very basic. Does it feel like the pursuit of your vision is strengthening you or sacrificing you? Because if you're pathologically being pushed, that's sacrificing. And that means that, as you go along in the pursuit of your vision, you're getting a little bit more worn out, you're getting a little bit more weak, you're worried about how long you can sustain this, right? You're kind of living in what I would consider to be a state of spiritual inflammation.
Mm,
Whereas does it feel like you're being strengthened? Does it feel like you're getting bigger, better, stronger? Sure, there are hard moments or moments of frustration. And yet, just like if you're at the gym, Anna, you know the difference between a session where you've hurt yourself versus where, yeah, that hurt and it's painful, but I grew myself.
right.
It's
Absolutely.
between a tear and real thing. So that's one way is just that question, does it feel like you're being strengthened or sacrificed? And so the second thing I think is, and it doesn't matter if you have children, but they're typically the ones that I use the most, is like, would you consciously teach your kids to approach your life and business the same way you do?
Probably not.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Because well, why?
Because we have to admit we have those moments, right, where we're just out of alignment, thriving on the chaos, not following our own advice. I'm going to just be honest. I find that to be true as a coach, right? I think a lot of times people assume that as a coach, we have it all figured out. We have to really like drink the water we sell, right?
Totally. Yeah, and coaching exposes you. I mean, it
Oh, yeah.
exposes you at a level that a lot are very uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
But If you wouldn't teach your kids to do it this way, there's a reason why, and I'm interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a question that I think is going to access the wisdom of your head and your heart. And let's just figure out, okay, well, what are the parts you would teach to them and what are the parts that you wouldn't? And the parts that you wouldn't, let's just get those into alignment. But right there reveals whether you're being pushed or pulled.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think too, like, obviously we work with a lot of leaders, and leadership is a big part of the language I use daily. And, as leaders, we're also here to grow and teach other leaders. And so a lot of these conversations become like a domino effect. And I find myself recently just examining what I believe about leadership, what I believe about business and development. I grew up in the hustle grind culture, but that's not the way everyone wants to live today, nor do I think it's always the best way either. So it's always about, I think, evolution and asking questions and really trying to raise self-awareness.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah. When you think about the people you coach, is there one, if there was such a thing, is there one struggle that you find is pretty common with a lot of people today?
Yeah, I call it the high achievers dilemma. And,
Uh-huh.
when you think about a lot of the people who have built their businesses, I say this jokingly, but they built their business off caffeine and cortisol,
Yeah.
right? And so they're used to that hustle, the grind, the
Sure.
chaos, all of that. You can take them to a moment where you help them realize, all those fears and things that you're trying to avoid, you're actually built to handle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote about this actually yesterday in my newsletter that a lot of people I think are living what I call a Pac-Man life.
Yes.
And when people reach out to me, Anna, and they say, hey, I'd like to explore a coaching relationship, my response to them is always the same. What is it that you're looking to get from a coaching relationship with me? And 80% of the time they say, I just want to get to the next level. The next
Mm.
level. Oh, great. Okay, well, what is the next level and how would you know if you were there? And most people don't have a clear answer to that. They just have some sort of feeling stirring inside of them that they're supposed to have a better life than they do now, right? And yet, if you think about how Pac-Man lives, like Pac-Man drops into this level and his job is to eat as many dots as he possibly can. And yet, there's this element to it where you've got these ghosts and they're hungry, they're trying to eat him. And there's a concept, I learned about it originally from the book, The Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Gabor Mate,
Mm.
but it originates in Buddhism and the concept of hungry ghosts. They are these insatiable appetites that we have for love and belonging and worthiness and all of this stuff. And we get taught through the culture that somehow we're going to find those things in our achievements, that it's going to be, a bigger, better house, more beautiful vacations. But what I've found is that a hungry ghost is just as easily going to travel with you in a Mercedes as it is a Toyota. You're going to find it right inside of a designer dress, just like you will a sundress from Target.
And how does it ever, it's never satisfied. It's right. It's
Never
always,
satisfied. It's never
okay.
satisfied.
Right.
And so this high achiever's dilemma is when we're just like using all the health and vitality of our lives, running away from these hungry ghosts. And yeah, maybe you avoid them all and you eat the dots. And guess what happens? Well, you just go to another level. And now they're hungrier ghosts. They're faster. And now you have to eat the dots again. And so the high achiever's dilemma to me is when you know that you're consistently just running from ghosts, thinking that the next big achievement is going to absolve you. And yet, because of all the secondary benefits that they've received, the money, the way that they've maybe helped their families, all of those achievements, the awards, the recognition, because of all the secondary benefits they've gotten, even if they know that's the mode that they're operating from, they won't just give it up. And
Yeah.
so you have to take them on this journey where they can realize that you can still have all of this, all of the things that you currently have, but you can operate from a different fuel source. You can operate from faith just as easily as you can operate from fear. And it's a lot more fun.
Oh, it sure is. But this is such a good conversation because it really does affect so many of us. Myself too, over the years, I've wrestled with this because I'm wired to be a high achiever, and yet I search for purpose and fulfillment every day too. And so it's that I don't know if you can even call it a balance. I remember being in a mastermind with Gary Keller just a couple of years ago where he talked about the path to fulfillment and wealth building and success in his business. And he talked about, like, how do you know when enough is enough? And it's a profound question that I don't know if I have the answer to today. Because I do personally, I want to live a life where I'm just kind of out there with both arms open, grabbing it and building it. And I like taking other people on the journey, and I want to help other people succeed. And yet there's always cause and effect and a cost to everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think though that when you start looking at, there's a switch that can occur in people. If you think about what is success,
Mm-hmm.
success is knowing what you want and getting it.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of people that have achieved success,
sure.
right? Achieved success. I knew what I want and I got it. And I think that if you live in the world of success long enough, you start to look up and realize, like, I'm good. In fact, I'll never forget. I had a coaching client one time that she jumped on the call, and that's what she said. She's like, I just want you to know I'm good. And I said, what's that mean? And she said, well, I live where I want to live. I go on the vacations I want to go on. I've realized that a different house, another car, none of that's going to make me any happier. She's like, I'm good. And I said, well, what's that mean? And she said, well, now I want to devote my life and energy to helping the people that helped me get here have the same sense of freedom. And I realized something that in that moment, she made the switch. She went from success to significance,
Yeah.
right? Income to impact. And when you think about what is the bridge from success to significance, it's service. Who do you want to be in service to? And who are the people you want to help? What problem do you want to help them solve? And what does it do for you when you help those people solve that problem? I think that one of the biggest challenges today with social media is the amount of self-centeredness that we've created. It's all about me. And we are not wired that way, not from a healthy love, joy, connection perspective. We're wired to serve
Yeah,
other
I
people.
agree. And I
Now,
think that's the core of leadership too, right? And people get hung up on titles, and leadership's not about a title. We all have the ability to impact another person in small ways, big ways. It's just being willing to connect.
yeah, yeah. And yet, what you're always going to find is that it's all going to come from intention. At the end of the day, intention rules all. And so there's a lot of people that get into leadership and coaching because the intention is just to share all the advice that they have, all the exercises and insights that they have. They share it to another person as strategic avoidance so that they don't have to do the work themselves.
Mm.
It's like they're just trying to bypass, right, the
Hmm.
work. And, that to each their own. I don't find though that that's going to be all that effective in the long run because you're only going to coach people to the level of your own personal transformation. If
Hmm.
you go back to the Pac-Man analogy, the thing is like we spend so much health and vitality running from and avoiding things that if we would just learn to turn and face them, and face our fears. And the cool thing about Pac-Man is that they're called power pellets. They're those little things in the game that when you eat them, the game changes.
Yeah,
Now, man can eat the ghosts.
right.
Well, how do you turn all the things that are chasing you, all these fears that you're running to, how do you turn them into the prey and you into the predator? That's acceptance, radical acceptance. And they talk about this in Stoicism. It's called amor fati. It is embracing your fate. It's understanding that everything was meant to happen the way that it did for the evolution of your consciousness. And it's people misunderstand surrendering as if it's giving up. It's
Yeah.
not,
I
right?
was thinking of that, the difference between resistance and surrender. And
Mhm.
that surrender is not a sign of weakness.
Nope. Nope.
You want to talk a little bit more about that? The concept of surrender and what that might mean to someone who's really looking to live, I hate to say just live their best life, but really to find significance in what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain amount of resistance that we have to reality, right?
Mhm.
And the problem with resisting reality is now you're living in what I call double resistance.
Mm.
So, for example, if you're committed to working out, getting strong, right? I do yoga consistently. That's kind of my thing. And yet it's really, really hard. And I was there last night and I wear a Whoop. I burned 756 calories. It was a hard workout, right? And what I've learned though to with yoga is that if I've already made the decision to be there, if I've already accepted that I'm going to be there, there's the resistance of the workout, right? We call that resistance training because resistance training does make us stronger.
Sure.
But if I'm sitting in there resisting everything in my mind, like, oh, this is hard. I don't want to be here. It's really hot. If my mind is operating against reality that I've already to a degree accepted, well, now I'm living in this like double bond of energy that makes everything harder.
And it's a huge conflict.
It's a huge conflict. And so, like one of the things that people often talk about it is like time management. You can't manage time.
I say that all the time. You cannot manage time. You can only manage your choices around how you use your time, your behavior.
That's right, because time is just a currency. It's like a river. If you and I are floating in a river, we can talk all day long about how we're trying to manage the river, but the current is carrying you.
Right.
The current of time is always carrying you. And what you're doing is you're trying to manage yourself in the current.
Mm,
Surrender doesn't mean you're giving up, throwing the oars into the water and just saying, take me wherever you want to go. It means that you're going to stop trying to fight the current
right.
because my wife has to remind me of this. It's just something that she will say every now and then. She'll say, feet up, Jordan. And what she means is if you're in the current of time and life, put your feet up.
Huh.
Quit trying to fight the current. But you can definitely navigate yourself in that current to make it the best experience possible. And so, resistance, acceptance, surrender, to me, it's just surrendering yourself to the current of life while still navigating your course to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I agree completely. You're such a fascinating person to talk to. I just want to shift gears slightly and put a little spotlight on you personally. How do you maintain your positive outlook or protect your mindset from a world, that is always changing, right? But maybe this is exactly what we needed to talk about after this conversation around surrender and resistance. The world is pulling us in a lot of directions. We have to understand our values and stay true to it. How do you do that personally? And because you're helping a lot of people, listening to a lot of their stories, and there's a way to recover from that, I'm sure, at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of ways. I mean, one is, as it relates to the world right now, the thing that most people actually don't understand is that the world is safer than it's been in the history of the world.
Hmm.
It is actually safer than it's ever been. And yet, if you think about there is a media machine, this isn't a political statement, there's a media machine that has profited from making us dumb and angry.
I agree.
So, what it does is it points to all the problems and takes like little bitty, maybe 5% problems and puts them right inside of our algorithm so that it feels like that is reality everywhere. And the second that you become aware of it, and if you aren't clear on what I'm saying right now, I'm going to give you a piece of homework. I want you to go watch the movie The Matrix.
Hmm.
Just watch that movie and look at it from the perspective of what's really happening there. But I'm very aware of the fact that the world is safer than it's ever been. Bad shit has always happened and will always
Yes.
happen. There is an element of mystery to life that I don't think that we're ever going to be able to fully understand or explain. And so I just find comfort in that. Now, the other thing that I've come to know, Anna, like for example, as it relates to my own energy and protecting my health and things of that nature, one of my all-time favorite books is a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. It's an
Hmm.
amazing leadership book. It's probably my favorite leadership book, maybe my second favorite. But the idea there is just own everything in your world. Take responsibility, right? But like all ideas, they can be taken too far.
Sure.
Every idea can be taken too far. Like
Absolutely.
drinking water, is drinking water good? Sure. Is drinking 5 gallons a day bad? Yes.
Yes.
And so what I've come to know is that as a coach, there is an edge to my ownership.
Mm.
And it's where my ownership ends and your free will begins. You are a
Mm.
decision-making adult who has free will. And I am not going to live in what I call borrowed burden syndrome. I do not take responsibility for decision-making adults who don't take responsibility. That is not on me. I will
Well
help
said.
fix it. You'll quit on me before I quit on you, but you made the choice.
Right.
Live with the consequence. I was having this conversation with somebody this morning about
Were
a
you?
team they had a team where a couple of people decided to have an affair. And
Mm.
she felt really bad for those people. And it's like, I release you to the lessons of your life. And you're going to ultimately pay the price for the decisions that you make, but I'm not going to bear the responsibility for that.
No, and it's really, this is such a good conversation now because I think a lot of people just spend so much time and energy focused on worrying about, trying to figure out, understand things are just not in their control. And yet, by doing that, we're giving up our power and not spending enough time on the things that could actually shape us, mold us, change us, move us forward that are in our control.
That's right. And that's where I think that what happens for so many of us is that there's a lack of recognition that the voice in your head isn't actually you. And so the book A New Earth by
Hmm.
Eckhart Tolle is
Yes,
the one that really taught me this.
back
And
here.
it's amazing. Don't listen to that book, by the way. You have to read
No,
it.
it's
Got
like
to
a
trigger.
workbook, right? It's really like
Yeah.
a workbook when you start getting into it.
And he has the worst accent ever. It's terrible.
He is hard to listen to.
They should have
Sorry,
went ahead and,
Eckhart.
yeah, I love you, dude, and you changed my
We
life. But
love you, however.
you not have narrated your own books. But the idea, though, is that the mind is meant to help you survive. It's meant to help you thrive. But I think of it like a dog, right?
Mm.
So, like, you've probably, Anna, at some point been around a security dog, right, that is highly trained.
Sure.
And those dogs understand the difference between a real and a fake threat. They understand the cues of somebody who might be trying to break into a house versus a friend who's just walking in.
Yeah.
So the thing about the mind is that it's like the guard dog of your life. And unfortunately, some of us have never been taught how to train that dog. And so it's attacking the mailman the same way it would attack somebody coming to break into your home. And so it's completely overreactive and it's
Hmm.
barking at everything. And what I've come to know is that I can observe my mind. If you've ever had that experience of like driving in a really, really busy parking lot
Hmm.
and you've got your music up really loud and there's people everywhere and you're trying to find a parking spot and maybe your kids are talking to you in the back seat. So you reach over and you turn the music down. And why do we do that? We turn the music down so we can hear ourselves think. Well, if you can hear yourself think, then that means that there is a talker and then there's a listener. And so, who's the listener? Who's the observer? That's the seat of your consciousness.
Yes.
And when you can separate the dog trainer from the dog, and the dog's just sitting there barking about the world and all the things, it's just like, okay, well, he's going to eventually wear himself out.
Hmm.
I'm not going to like jump on the dog or try to do it. Like, just let the dog do its thing. But eventually, you've got to start to learn how to train it.
Yes.
And that's a whole other conversation. I call that mental hygiene
Maybe I'll
because,
have you back. We'll get into that.
okay, yeah. So, and we talk about this in detail in my free life, but I think for me, it's one, I don't take responsibility for people who don't take responsibility.
Yeah.
Or I don't take responsibility for the choices that people make. That's not on me. That's where my ownership ends and their free will begins. But also, I'm highly aware of when the dog is just barking.
You know, Jordan, I usually ask my guests to share what they really hope the audience takes from this recording. I'm going to answer the question. I think it's those three things you just said. There's been a lot of great stuff that you've dropped in this conversation throughout the beginning of the episode. But I have to say, those three things, if you could take just one thing with you, I think that those three things are pretty important for someone to understand.
I would agree.
Yeah. All right, so I could talk to you for hours, but before we run out of time, I do want to ask you a couple of maybe what I would call rapid fire questions. If you could describe your mission right now in one word, what would it be?
Freedom.
Freedom, I figured. And what's a daily habit that you swear by?
Writing.
So talk a little bit about writing. You mentioned that earlier because I don't think that's something a lot of people have maybe in their daily habits. Why is that so important to you or helpful to you?
I think that we spend way too much time listening to outer content and not our inner content, and that
Mm.
writing to me is the practice of thinking. And so sitting down and fleshing out ideas or, I'll never forget one time, Anna, I went to, it's called the 4-Day MBA. They don't teach it anymore by Keith Cunningham. And
Oh, yeah, yeah.
4 days, right? And it was $8,000. And this was 5 years ago, right? So today, I mean, today's world, it'd be 12 or 15,000.
Sure.
So first 2 days, he goes through some really great business concepts and I learned a lot. But the last 2 days, essentially what he did is he just locked us in this room and he would put up on the projector these really important questions, right? Like, what is it that you spend a lot of your time avoiding? And then he would set a timer and he would make us do it for 45 minutes. And so you'd have to sit there and just answer that question in a distraction-free environment. And the insights that we created after leaving that session, what's interesting is he forgot a zero because I would have paid him $80,000.
Yeah, because when you're sitting down and forced to really spend that much time, you can't help but keep unpacking it and unpacking it and unpacking it, right? Until you get to some core that you didn't even know existed.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
So
awesome.
that I think learning how to think that clearly allows me to communicate more clearly, and I coach at the level of my communication. So writing, I think, is something that, we've turned over a lot of it to AI, and I use it to edit and help me
Sure.
with grammar and stuff like that. But I don't allow it to write any of our posts. It doesn't write my newsletter because I think that's where I've learned how to think.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. What is a mantra you live by?
The biggest mantra that I probably live by is I practice greatness now.
I practice greatness now.
Yeah, it's something to help me remember that life is just a series of moments that's sewn together through time. And at the end of the day, I think that if you're going to have the best life, it's by practicing moment mastery.
Yeah.
Being able to slow yourself down, and I'll give you the hack on this. We talk about this in the Freed method. Slowing yourself down in the macro and micro moments of life and just asking yourself the question, what would the hero version of me do right now? Would the hero version of me eat the double cheeseburger? Or would the hero version of me eat the salad? Would the hero version of me stay in bed? Would the hero version of me get up and go walk? Now, the answers aren't always the same. Sometimes you do need to stay in bed and sleep a little bit more. So it's understanding and,
But
and
that
being
might be your hero showing up in that moment.
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. But becoming conscious of the decision-making process so that you can then look at it through the lens of, okay, there is this hero inside of me. If my life were a movie and I were the hero, right?
Yep.
What would he or she do next? Moment mastery, I think, is the thing that we're often overlooking. We get way too caught up in destinations, right?
Yeah.
Where we want to go, places we want to experience, and we get too caught up in destination and we don't focus enough on our days, the moment. And so really practicing that.
That's something I've been much more mindful of in the last year or two. You mentioned a couple books. If there was one book that you would say has had the biggest impact on your life or your mindset, or there it is. Okay, talk about this one. That's a big book if you're not watching
Called
on
Tools of Titans.
YouTube. This is a huge book, the size of a big textbook phone book. What is it?
It's called Tools of Titans. It's by Tim Ferriss. If you're familiar with Tim Ferriss, he wrote the 4 Hour Work Week. He has one of the most popular podcasts on the face of the planet. And what this book is, Anna, is, he's been interviewing top performers across all different industries, walks of life for decades, right? And so actors, actresses, doctors, entrepreneurs, all of these different walks of people. And so what Tools of Titans is at that point when he wrote the book, he went back to all of his previous podcasts and he pulled out all the best snippets from each of the people. And so this book is just
Ah.
a snippet of the greatest people giving the greatest lessons. To me, it's just the hack of here's like the TED talk
Yeah.
of, all these different lives and perspectives. And I wish that he wrote this, I think back in 2016. I hope that he writes another
I was
one.
thinking about that he would want to have a second volume, right?
I
Yeah.
hope that he does. But I also like that book because it's a choose your own adventure. You don't
Yeah.
have to read it linearly.
Sure. You can just open it up and see what comes off the page or yeah.
Totally, totally. But I have to mention a second book, and it's
Sure.
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, today, Anna, I don't believe that most of us have real problems. We have violated preferences. We live in
Wow.
unprecedented times, and the life is so abundant. And so we just manufacture and lower the bar for what we call problems. And read that book and tell me you have real problems.
I mean, if you can't read that book and not be changed.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
you can't. So
a
that was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, if you didn't catch that one.
great
Um,
book.
so
But it's heavy.
I'm writing down what you just said. We think we have problems, we just have violated preferences.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
it's like you're complaining about the fact that your barista at Starbucks got your order wrong or that the drink wasn't hot.
Mm,
Like, these are not real problems. And real problems are things that you can't get rid of.
mm-hmm,
A
mm,
lot of what, him being stuck in a concentration camp, he couldn't get out. That's a real problem.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that pain isn't real, but let's put it into perspective. And I think that, one of the reasons that our generation of kids, and this is the reason that my kids are in martial arts, and that's the thing that they can do whatever they want, but this is the one thing that I ask them to do, and I bribe them to do it because I want them to understand what it means to do something hard. I want them to understand the law of process. And I think that the reason that so many kids today are anxious is not because they're overwhelmed, they're underwhelmed. They are
Mm,
under challenged, they are not pushed enough. And your brain is something called anti-fragile. And it thrives on challenge. And in the absence of it, it makes it up. That's the problem with the mind is it's so cunning. And so I empathize with those people. I'm not judging.
absolutely. Absolutely.
It feels real to them.
Sure.
Come on.
And yes.
You need to be tougher. And, my grandmother, I had two grandmothers that taught me this. One of them, my mom's brother was born in the early 40s with cerebral palsy,
Mm,
wheelchair ridden. And most people, even today, with his level of cerebral palsy, don't live past the age of 35 or 40, right?
mm,
Even today with our technology.
yeah.
She kept him alive until he was 75 years old.
Wow.
She was tough, but she was still kind.
Yes.
Their grandmother, same way. My dad's dad died when my dad was 10. She had four boys living in a trailer, kept all those boys alive. They're still alive today, all contributing members of society. She was tough.
Yeah. The grittiness, right? The mental toughness, that's a whole other conversation too. And that's really another thing. We talk about a lot of things that separate high achievers from others, and we can sum it up under mindset, but yet there's a lot of components of mindset. And I think that we have to look at our ability to be mentally tough and resilient and, somewhat tenacious. When growing up, we used to call it scrappy. And so, yeah, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I agree. You've left people with a lot to think about, but if there was one thing to sum it up, I said those three things earlier, but what would you like to either leave our listeners with or definitely share how they can find you and take advantage of some of your products and services, Jordan? So what do you want to impart before we end today?
Okay, well, first you can find me, jordanfreed.com, and at Coach Jordan Freed on Instagram, and then just Jordan Freed on Facebook. My Freed Life is my signature event, and we have our next one in January. Go check that out. We only have 7 seats left, though. The thing that I would say, Anna, about that is there's something that's fundamental to my coaching philosophy, my life philosophy, and it's best advice, best life.
Mm,
And I've already kind of alluded to this, but I think at any point you're going to find yourself at a fork in the road, right? I don't know what to go left or I don't know what to go right. I'm not sure if I should keep doing this. I'm not sure if I'm doing it the right way, whatever. And so as coaches, I think of coaches as one of three different types. There are fear coaches, there are cheer coaches, and then there are mirror coaches. Fear
Mm,
coaches, it's like everything is falling, it's all going to hell in the handbasket. That doesn't help people.
no.
Cheer coaches are those that are Pollyanna, they don't look at the facts, the reality of life, and
You
it's
can
like,
do it.
great, awesome. It works for a time, but not for much time. But mirror leaders are those that I look at myself and I think of, I have to be a catalyst to help you summon the wisdom of your head and your heart. I don't have the right to tell you what I think is right for you because you're an individual.
Right.
There are universal questions, but the answers are unique to us.
That's right.
And I think that they're best found through the lens of coaching the people we love.
Mm,
So when you think about you're at the fork in the road, for example, my question is always, well, who in the world do you love most? My daughter. Awesome. She's your age. It's her company. All circumstances the same. And if she called you up and said, hey, mom, what do I do? There's probably some questions you would ask, right? What are those questions? And then what advice would you give her? Because whatever that advice is, I believe is the best source advice that you have access to. And then it's just about becoming a catalyst for courage to live that advice. And I feel like if you will follow the best advice that you have, you're going to live your best life. It doesn't mean you won't make mistakes.
right.
You will, I believe, walk the path of fulfillment and make the best of life for you.
Well, you've been fired for me. This has been really great. I've taken notes. I've got a lot that I'm thinking about, and I just knew this would be a great conversation. So I'm really glad that you could make the time today to do this. And I'm not kidding. If I can invite you back, I'd love to have you again, and we'll talk about some other things that I think can turn some people, maybe get them thinking a little differently, right? That's what we're here to do, is just encourage you to think differently. Is it
Love it.
possible, right? Is it possible?
Love it.
Jordan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Anna. And you know where to find me. I'd be
Yeah.
glad to come back.
All right, cool. All right, I will talk with you soon. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.